What's up YouTube? Today I want to go over the top 10 worst anime adaptations. Remember, just because an anime is on here, that doesn't mean it's a bad show. It could be a great show, it just means it's a bad adaptation. Starting with number 10, let's go with Hunter x Hunter 2011. Okay, we're starting off strong. Let me explain myself, but before I do, I've received some comments on my other anime lists saying that I'm basically clickbaiting or whatever with some of my picks. I do a lot of things on this channel, but lying about my opinions is not one. If something is on this list, it's because that's what I truly believe. So before you type up that hate comment, let's go over what criteria makes an anime adaptation good or not. A bad adaptation is an adaptation of a work that has no value over the originals or possibly other adaptations. So as you probably know, 99% of stories in anime are adapted from a manga, a Japanese comic book. A good anime adaptation has qualities that make it worth watching over reading the manga. Usually, it's as simple as seeing a fight scene that was drawn be animated. So what makes Hunter x Hunter a bad adaptation? I don't think the anime captures the mood and tone of Hunter x Hunter properly, and it skips over a crucial plot point early in the story that dampens the impact of a major event later. Let's go deeper. The world of Hunter x Hunter, if you really think about it, is pretty gritty and dark. If you aren't some gifted individual, you could be a victim of something you couldn't even see coming. It's pretty common. Gon is one of the only bright spots in this world, someone who is wholly positive where everyone else is jaded and on edge. I think the 1999 anime displayed this perfectly. That anime had its own issues, but I think it held up to Togashi's vision a little more faithfully. Spoilers for Hunter x Hunter incoming, skip to this time code. Them skipping Kite's intro in the first episode definitely made his death not hit as hard. They did a decent job introducing him when they did, and it was still a sad scene, but it would have been improved slightly if they just kept the beginning the same as the manga. Number 9 is Blade Sorcerer. I was introduced to this manga through TikTok. I binged it in one night and I loved it, read it again and again. Then I learned an anime adaptation was coming out. Fast forward to now, I watched the adaptation and took out the heart, the soul, and it ripped out some of the biggest plot points from the manga. I'm not going to spoil the manga, I do still highly recommend it, but this adaptation was truly pitiful. Number 8 is Twin Star Exorcist. This one is really sad to me. The place that Spy X Family is in now, the place that Don and Gachikuta are about to be, I feel like Twin Star Exorcist could have stood right beside them. This is a shonen anime fan's dream show. It has good fighting, great character designs, transformations, whatever you need. Unfortunately though, the show kind of veered away from the main story and descended into its own weird thing. Let's talk more about the criteria for bad anime adaptations. Now, just because the show doesn't follow the source material, the story in the manga, that doesn't make it a bad adaptation. It makes it an unfaithful one, but not necessarily bad. JJK, especially in season 2, is a pretty unfaithful adaptation at points, but it should almost be a requirement to watch it as a fan. These deviations from the main story, those extended fight scenes and everything, will make you appreciate the series more. And the deviations don't make it veer off into its own completely different storyline. Number 7 is Man Wonderland. I don't have too much to say here. This is another show that's good enough. If you only watched the anime and you weren't aware of the manga, I wouldn't be surprised if you were a fan of this show, and that's fine, it's not a bad show, but the show cut out crucial characters and plot points that added dimensions to the world and fleshed out the cast. It's annoying how commonplace that is. If your anime doesn't do that, consider yourself lucky. Number 6 is Flowers of Evil. You know, in the manga community, there are a couple of books that are revered. They're put on a higher pedestal. This isn't like the big 3 or anything, they don't dominate the market, but they are considered like the cream of the crop, the best of the best. Stuff like Berserk, Goodnight Pun Pun. Give this artsy nonsense to a show that really digs deep into human psychology, something trippy or surreal like Homunculus. It doesn't really fit or benefit or improve Flowers of Evil, it's just kind of ugly and it makes the story a little hard to enjoy. The show doesn't need to look ugly to convey its disturbing themes. The manga doesn't look like this and it displays the themes just fine. Number 5 is Noblesse. This is another that feels kind of personal to me. Noblesse was one of the first manhwa, that's a Korean comic book, that I sat down and binged in just a few sittings. It's really good. And this isn't a compliment you hear much, but the book is actually really well paced. The manhwa spends a significant amount of time showing the main character enjoying his life, getting acclimated to the modern world. He develops relationships and he really gets close with his allies before the enemies and their factions are introduced. The Noblesse anime just jumps straight into the heat of the fire and skips the first whole arc. Oh wait, the first arc was animated though, it's in an OVA. They condensed the first arc, which contains a significant amount of early world building, the explanation for how the main character arrived in the modern world, the first major fights, and how one of the central characters joined the cast. They condensed all of that into a 30-minute OVA. Awesome. Number 4 is Tokyo Ghoul. Now we're starting to get to some infamous ones. Sui Ishida is one of those visionaries. He has such a specific vision that's tailored to the medium of manga, so it can be a little hard to adapt his work. But Studio Pierrot tried, and I would say at least for season 1, they succeeded for the most part. One major flaw the Tokyo Ghoul manga has is that its action scenes can be hard to follow at times. I think this is something that Ishida struggles with in general, but the anime did an admirable job of adapting it. After that first season though, the anime went on to follow its own plot separate from the manga. Where have we heard that before? This already spelled doom for Tokyo Ghoul. The content of the second season was a little meandering and the story wasn't as tight as the first. A manga widely considered a masterwork had a decent start and a good first season, but all of that was destroyed by the second, and it didn't get much better after that. It's a common story we hear around these parts. Number 3 is God of High School. This show was one of the reasons I made this list. I love the God of High School webtoon. It's easily in the top 3 for me of all time. The action is really fluid and dynamic. The characters are interesting, if not a little shallow, and the power system is very different. That's the webtoon though. The anime is a completely different beast. These crazy people put 115 chapters, basically the first few arcs of the story, shoved it into 12 episodes. That's ridiculous. Those 115 chapters fleshed out and developed relationships between a dozen characters, explained their powers, their backstories, and their martial arts, all while leaving time for the main cast and their daily lives. And they smashed all of that into 12 episodes. The pacing issues in this one were out of control. It's like they never took a second to breathe. Number 2 is Promis Neverland. This series had the 2019 anime community in an absolute chokehold. The landscape is so different now though. I feel like if they dropped this show in 2024, most people wouldn't even blink an eye at it. But the word of mouth back then was crazy. Everybody was telling everybody to watch this show blind. And season 1 was genuinely one of the great ones. It's hard to put into words how good it was. A true anime thriller. Season 2 on the other hand, don't bother with it. Just read the manga. They completely butchered the final arcs of the show. It was tragic. Number 1 is Black Butler. Okay. Probably not the name most of you were expecting to hear, right? This is really personal to me though. I think this is probably the biggest travesty in all of anime. Black Butler has a certain sinister charm about it. I really don't know how to describe it. Ciel and Sebastian are extremely interesting and multifaceted characters. You could put them in any setting, in any scenario, it'll be interesting. The rest of the cast is great as well. I mean, I could sit here and gush about the show all day long, so I think it's insane that the anime adaptation is like this. The anime adaptation is actually not that bad. Like, if I'm being honest with you, it's okay, like it's decent. I want to pay a special compliment to the dub voice acting. These voice actors were picked perfectly for these roles. They embody the characters excellently. But for some reason, barely any of the first season is canon. So the story doesn't progress. There's nothing pushing the main plot along. It's just episodic vignettes. And it's interesting, but it just feels like it's spinning its wheels. The second season, again, is a completely original anime-only story. While it's not as bad as some of the other anime original content we've seen, it's still not very good. At least Tokyo Ghoul and Promis Neverland had their one good season to latch onto. Despite being one of the best-selling manga of all time, it never really got the chance to shine. And while the recent continuations have been doing a pretty good job, the blunder with the first 2 seasons make the show hard to really get into. So that's it. Those are the top 10 worst anime adaptations in my opinion. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, make sure to hit the bell to get notifications when I post the next video, and watch more anime.